Okay, this is the example problem from the page. It's been a long time since I took statistics, and so at first I was like, I don't know what these words mean, but as I looked at the tables, I realized that they're just regular formulas. You just got to figure out what the symbols mean, and also where to plug in where. So I kind of drew, they're kind of confusing, these arrows. So I'm going to go through and explain this. Okay, so the example says, determine whether P, I don't know what these symbols mean, Q, this, basically this formula, and this formula are equivalent. So I made a key down here. So this little symbol right here, I don't know what it's called, basically means the opposite. So whatever P is, this, if you see this symbol in front of it, it's going to be the opposite of what P is. And then this symbol, basically, if there's a discrepancy, it's always going to be false. False wins. False wins the battle. So if you're comparing T or P and Q for the second column, you see here T and F. If you're comparing those, obviously there's a discrepancy, so they're going to fight it out, and if it's this symbol between them, then false wins. If it's this symbol, then true wins. On both of these, though, if the two equal, like a false and a false, if they equal, then it just is what it is. So false and a false is a false, a true and a true right here would be a true. So now these symbols right here with the line underneath, this is the same thing. If there's a battle, if it's pointing upward, it's false. Think about upward as false, like they're making it up. It's false. And then downward would be true, like set in stone, in the ground. It's true. Can't change it. So, and then the line underneath means that if they equal, it's basically the opposite of if they weren't equal. So, if it's a T and an F, then obviously the F wins, because if it's a battle, it's false when it's pointing up. But if it's a T and a T, it's true. But if it's a F and an F, it's also true, because if they're the same two and it has this line underneath, if they're the same two, then it equals whatever the opposite of the top symbol. So the same thing with, I don't know if that makes sense, but the same thing here, it's pointing down. So if there's a discrepancy, if there's a battle between them, that one's true and one's false, it's going to equal true. But if they're not a discrepancy, if they're equal, it's going to equal false. Regardless if they're two T's, it's still going to be false for this symbol. And then this symbol right here was just comparing tautology. And I looked at this and I looked at this and I looked at this. Tautology means basically that all the statements are true. And that means that they equal. So a false and a false, that's true. They're the same, right? True and a true, that's true that they're both the same. Under all conditions, these are the same. So that means they're all true. But obviously you can see here and here that you already found that up here. This equivalency table just proves tautology. This is just the extra step showing it. So I don't know. I was really confused. I thought they were two different things. They're not. So I'm going to go over this example, and then I'll make another video of the first problem you have. Okay, so first you always want to start your tables with P and Q. So right here is the first problem that we're comparing. So this first whole table is just this first problem. And as you can see, we have to break it down. Like we have to find out what negative Q is, what negative P is. Then we have to find out what this piece is. Oh, sorry, I'm not even on the video. Sorry, I don't have a GoPro or anything, so I'm holding this. Okay, we're looking at this problem. And this problem is just this whole table. I don't know if you saw that or not. Okay, so negative Q and negative P, we have to find those. We also have to find this part of the problem and this part of the problem. So basically, that's what the table is. So first you start out with your P's and Q's. Now, it's pretty easy because there's only two things they could be. They can either be true or false. And with P and Q comparing, you could have 4 different scenarios, which are these right here. True and true, or true and false, or false and true, or false and false. So you're going to start every table with these 4, because those are the only 4 possibilities we have. So that's basically what it is. You're comparing all possibilities for these 2 statements, statement P and statement Q. So remember we said this symbol right here means negative. So negative P. So if P is true, then negative P is false. If P is true, negative P is false. If P is false, negative P, is true. If P is false, negative P is true again. Now the same thing with the Q. Negative Q is F, because over here it's true. So Q is false, that means negative Q is true. Q is T, true, that means negative Q is false. And Q is false, that means negative Q is true. So it's basically just the opposite. So I showed that here with these red arrows. I don't know if you can see them. This red arrow, this red arrow right here is going to show this next column. So right here we need P, but this symbol means that false winning, with false winning and negative Q. So basically we're only looking at these 2 columns, P and negative Q, and comparing them. So right here, P and negative Q with false winning. So it's true and false, that means false wins. Again, the next 2, true and true, that means true wins. Because when they're equal, it is what it is, if there's no line on the bottom. And then false and false is false because they're equal. So false and false equals false. And then false and true is false because there's a battle, and false wins due to this symbol. So now we got that column filled out. So now the next column, I'm sorry, it's getting a little blurry, huh? Okay, the next column is negative P, and same thing, false winning, and a Q. So we're going to look at this opposite P column and this Q column. And it doesn't matter what order they are because it's just true and false, and we're just comparing them. So Q and negative P for the first one, true and false, false wins. False and false is false, true and true is true, and false and true is false. So that's right here. See? These 2 columns and this column. And then you can see the answers. And then, so now that's showing these purple lines right here. I wasn't paying attention when I drew that one. Anyways, the purple line goes here, purple line goes here. That means those are the only 2 columns you're going to look at to figure this out. So now we have this half, which is right here, and this half, which is right here. So now we're going to compare these 2 with this condition. So this condition means that true wins if there's a battle, basically. So false and false is what it is. It's a false. A true and a false means true wins, right? A false and a true means true wins, and a false and a false means false wins. So that's basically the entire first problem. So now we're going to do the second part of the problem, which is P, and then this symbol, and then Q. So we have P and Q, and we set them up the same exact way, the same 4 possibilities, true and true, a true and a false and a true, and a false and a false. The same ones. So then we go here to, oh, hold on, something's wrong with the baby. I'll be right back.